Joining me now is the one and only political strategist and New York Times best-selling author Roger Stone. He's worked alongside Nixon, Reagan, and most recently Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. He's got two books out right now, The Clintons' War on Women and Jeb, the Bush Crime Family. He's joining us to discuss the results of last night's primary, Republican primary, as well as the Clintons and the Bush family. Roger, welcome back to the program.
Delighted to be here.
So, Roger Stone, let's just jump right into it. Last night, Donald Trump, he won big, scoring key victories in Florida, Illinois, a close call in Missouri, and then, of course, the Northern Mariana Islands. Before we get into the media manipulation, the talk of a brokered convention, what is your immediate takeaway and prediction moving forward?
Well, the most extraordinary thing about last night is that, at least in the state of Florida, $40 million was spent on heavy negative advertising on television, cable, and radio, as well as internet. And Trump spent comparatively almost nothing. And he won by 20 points. At the same time, there was a national media buy by the Stop Trump forces that may at this point be as high as 70 million, and obviously more money in the bank. And it's had virtually no impact whatsoever. So voters are rejecting this. They're rejecting the mainstream media mugging of Trump. They're rejecting the establishment assault on Trump. And they're voting for the only nationalist in this race, the only one who supports American sovereignty. It's breathtaking. And in all honesty, it's the first time I've seen anything like it in the 40 years I've been in American politics.
Yeah, certainly. As I look back, in my short foray into politics, I'm baffled. As are many pundits. It seems like every bullet that is fired at Trump, forgive the the poor analogy, is absorbed. It only makes him stronger. How do you account for that?
Well, I think the voters are in the most suspicious and angry mood they have ever been. They're tired of being manipulated. Their expectation level on the heels of the election of Obama for real hope and change was very high. They've seen those expectations dashed. Nothing has really changed, not in terms of our economy or opportunity in this country or our position in the world. We go deeper in debt. We're mired in these endless wars. There's a complete erosion of our civil liberties. The politicians lay on more spending, more debt, more borrowing. There are bailouts for the big banks, but there's no bailouts for the American people in terms of their home economies. I think voters are in a very suspicious mood. And you're right, Trump has managed to jujitsu all of these attacks. So when George Soros and David Brock and Rahm Emanuel and the Clintonites send demonstrators to Chicago, outfit them in Bernie t-shirts and Bernie signs, even though they're not Sanders supporters in any way, it actually made Trump stronger. It actually rebounded to Trump's benefit, at least in terms of winning the nomination. Now, I think that the game plan here is more than just trying to foment violence around the Trump rallies and around the Trump campaign so that they can then blame Trump for the violence. I think they see the big picture, which is there are millions of blue-collar voters who are currently supporting Sanders because they're unhappy with NAFTA and they're unhappy with these international trade deals that have destroyed the economy and, more precisely, destroyed their livelihood, destroyed the American job market. And those who are for Hillary are deathly afraid that these voters will ultimately go to the only other anti-establishment, anti-international trade deal candidate in the race. That would be Donald Trump. So this is an attempt to stigmatize Trump in such a way that the Sanders voters cannot go there. He's a racist. He's a bigot. He's a madman. He's advocating violence. He's in bed with the Ku Klux Klan. These are, of course, all lies. And we've seen this playbook before in 1964. This is how the establishment tattooed Barry Goldwater to ensure that he couldn't win a general election. So I think that is really what is afoot, and that's what played out. Again, Trump was stronger. I think he won the Illinois primary on the basis of his reaction to these demonstrators.
Now, we're looking at footage that was recently shot, streamed live by Right Side YouTube channel. This is a speech that Donald was giving. What's really curious about the footage is that you see his airplane. He comes out of it very presidential-like, but then you have Chris Christie literally walking before him. What do you make of this relationship between Christie and Trump right now? He's everywhere.
Well, look, I think he's a valuable asset in the sense that it is a chink in the establishment's armor. I can also tell you, because I know for a certainty, he has been promised nothing. He has no deal to be Attorney General. He has no deal to be the head of Homeland Security. He has no deal, period. But in a sense, he's a political acquisition, and Trump is wise to use him as a surrogate. And as we've seen, he's more sure-footed than Ben Carson, who endorsed Trump, and then quickly said, well, he endorsed him because there was nobody else who could win. And even if Trump is president and he's a bad president, he'd only be president for 4 years. Thank you very much, Ben. Now I see why you were out of this contest.
Yeah, curious endorsement by Ben Carson. Now, let's take a look at another group that has just formed. Prominent libertarians are now coming out of the closet, if you will, in support of Donald Trump. Dr. Walter Block, a senior fellow at the Mises Institute, he is leading the charge. Are Trump's views in line with libertarian values?
Some of his views are. He has expressed, for example, great skepticism about the war on drugs. He is not interested in foreign entanglements where our best interests are not clear, our national interests are not clear. He opposed the Iraq War. I was disturbed to hear him say that he wanted to send between 20 and 30,000 troops to Syria. I think that is a mistake. But there are certainly some libertarian issues on which he is solid. More importantly, though, he's the only nationalist in a field of globalists. He is the only one for the sovereignty of the American government and doesn't want to sign up for one world government, or the New World Order, as the Bush folks call it. So I can see how some libertarians would gravitate to his banner. I'm a libertarian myself. I'm a member of the Libertarian Party of Florida. I'm a strong supporter of Trump because I think he is superior to all the other candidates. This is why I think, for example, Dr. Ron Paul has been assailing Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has no libertarian views. He's a statist in the Bush style. I've written several pieces, which Matt Drudge picked up for the Daily Caller, making the connection that Ted Cruz is really a Bush Republican. He comes from the Bush family. He was George W. Bush's chief issue advisor. He was during the campaign and in the first year of his presidency. His wife, Heidi Cruz, was the deputy to Condoleezza Rice when they led us into a phony war in Iraq, and then went over to work for Robert Zoellick, the U.S. trade representative, who then wired her at Goldman Sachs, where she became a partner. Goldman Sachs and the big Wall Street boys would later give a secret sweetheart loan to Ted Cruz for his U.S. Senate campaign. So any libertarian who is thinking about voting for Cruz needs to understand that Cruz is a neocon, just like Jeb Bush, just like Marco Rubio.
So what would you say to a Ron or Rand Paul supporter who is considering Donald Trump but may have some reservations?
Look, he's not perfect. He's not by any means a pure conservative nor a pure libertarian, but he's his own man. He's not beholden to any special interests. And the special interests that we're talking about have no libertarian views. They are the people who are in favor of the mass incarceration of people for the possession of small amounts of drugs. They are the people who have brought us 30 years of failed economic policy, adventurous foreign policy, an immigration policy that has left our nation unsafe, trade policies that have put us at a multi-billion-dollar disadvantage. So I can't make the case to anybody Trump is a perfect libertarian, but I do think he is a better choice for libertarians than any other candidate currently in this race.
Now, we had last night on CNN, they said that Trump destroyed the GOP. Did Trump destroy the GOP, or is the GOP alive and kicking?
How can you destroy the GOP when Trump has brought roughly 25% more voters to the Republican primaries in every state where he's been on the ballot? We see people who have stopped voting because they think the system is rigged and because they doubt the two-party duopoly that's been running things. We've seen an influx of those voters come back and start voting again. We've seen a number of people, particularly millennials, who have never voted, now coming to the table and voting for the first time. So yesterday in Florida, for example, just in the absentee ballots, 25% of those cast were people who didn't vote 2 years ago or 4 years ago. If anything, Trump is revitalizing the Republican Party. He's strengthening the Republican Party by increasing their outreach to elements that would never otherwise consider voting Republican. That's why I find it kind of comical that Ted Cruz keeps saying Donald Trump can't beat Hillary Clinton. No, on the contrary, it's Ted Cruz who can't beat Hillary Clinton because Ted Cruz will not receive a single non-Republican vote. His crossover appeal is zero.
So why then are we seeing, if all these facts are true, and certainly they are, because we're seeing massive crossover from the Democrats. 60,000, I believe it was, in Massachusetts came out, Pennsylvania, even thousands and thousands of people crossing over into the Republican Party. So why is it that we're seeing people like Mitt Romney come out, even the neocons, the McCains coming out saying, look, we're not going to stand behind this guy. They are slamming him at every opportunity. Obviously, it's not sticking. But what is the direct opposition to Trump if he's doing such great things to make the Republican Party the Big Tent party they claim it is?
It's very simple, because he's not controllable, because he is not beholden to any special interest, any billionaire, any super PAC, any special pleader. He is his own man. Look, it's amazing how many people in the Republican Party wear two hats. Haley Barbour, governor of Mississippi, lobbyist. Reince Priebus, before he was chairman, lobbyist. When he's finished being chairman, lobbyist. Ed Rogers, lobbyist. Republican National Committee man from Massachusetts, Ron Kaufman, lobbyist. These guys make a living peddling influence. But if you have no influence with Trump, you have nothing to peddle. This is why the ruling class is so apoplectic about Trump. A guy we can't bully and a guy we can't buy, and a guy who, as I said earlier, isn't for the New World Order, is not for global government, is not for regional or a North American government. A guy who stands up for American sovereignty. This scares the daylights out of the political establishment. And the sad truth is, if this effort for a brokered convention turns out to split the party down the middle and leave the nomination, regardless of who wins it, worthless, that's perfectly all right with the lobbyist class within the Republican Party. They can still make money off of their connections to Mitch McConnell. They can still make money off their connections to Paul Ryan. And they'd be perfectly happy with Hillary Clinton because she's completely transactional. She's not a progressive or a liberal. She can be bought for money, and their clients have plenty of money.
Now, you mentioned the brokered convention. Donald Trump, some accounts has 661 delegates, other accounts about 646. Cruz is holding it 397, Kasich 142. Will Trump reach the magic number to clinch the nomination, or do you foresee a brokered convention?
Well, he's going to come very, very close. He only needs to win 50% of the delegates chosen going forward. There's about 500 delegates yet to be chosen, and then he would only need about 25% of the proportional delegates in the states that are proportional. So, let me restate that. There's 500 state delegates in winner-take-all states yet to be chosen. I think he's going to win most of those. Those are potentially very strong states for Trump. States like California, states like New Jersey, states like Pennsylvania, states like Arizona. And then if he just gets his proportional share, he's going to be very, very close to the magic number. Now, if he falls short, the establishment has an entire bag of tricks that they're already working. First of all, they're going to try to throw out all the delegates that were won in open primary states, states where Democrats had the right to vote in Republican primaries. They're going to try to make California not winner take all because of some ambiguous language in the state rules about the difference between shall and will. Shall being interpreted in the courts as meaning the possibility but not the certainty. And then additionally, you have the fact that they're going to unbind all those delegates who are bound on the first ballot. This is already pre-written in the call of the convention rules. So look for a giant rules fight to cement these rules in place. Look for them to play again with 40B, the rule that kept Ron Paul from being nominated or having his votes counted at the last Republican National Convention. They can monkey with that rule and, for example, require that you must have a majority of the delegates in 10 states before your name could be put in nomination. And if Trump wins that, they'll make it 12. If he wins 12, they'll make it 15. So the establishment is up to no good. And there is a serious campaign afoot to steal this nomination from Trump if he is close, but he does not hit the magic number on the first ballot.
So let's talk about Kasich for a moment here, because he did take Ohio. He scored the 66 delegates there. He's vowed to stay in the race. What purpose does Kasich serve by staying in the race?
Well, he keeps votes away from Trump. I mean, I think, frankly, the establishment was leaning on Marco Rubio to stay in the race. The more candidates there are, the more you can divide up these proportional states where everybody running gets a few delegates. On the other hand, I think Kasich may inadvertently benefit Trump because this is not a two-person race today. It's still a three-person race. On the other hand, it's very hard to see down the road a big state or even a small state where Kasich wins. He probably won't even be on the ballot in Pennsylvania. I think his ballot application and the signatures that he filed are flawed. So he is, at this point, probably positioning is beneficial. I should mention that I think the voting in Ohio yesterday was very badly tainted. I think there was widespread voter fraud. But additionally, I think the actual format of the ballot is illegal and should and probably will be challenged in court. Let me also say there's widespread voter fraud in the Texas result. I'm working with something called the Trump Ballot Security Project. You can go read more about this at stopthesteal.org. We are documenting in all of the states, but particularly the states where Ted Cruz has won, shenanigans involving the voters, voter irregularity and voter fraud. It is not inconceivable that we will challenge the seating of Cruz delegates in Texas, for example, in the Credentials Committee in Cleveland, and seek to replace them with Trump delegates who were cheated out of victory through voter fraud.
Wow. That is, what was the website again for that?
Stopthesteal.org.
Stop the Steal.
You can go there to report irregularities. There's a toll-free phone number listed there. We need your name and how to contact you. You can't just tell us you were cheated out of your vote in Ohio, but not tell us how to contact you and document it. And then if you want to contribute, this is not an inexpensive effort. We've had to dispatch election law lawyers to Kansas, to Idaho, to Hawaii, to Ohio, to Florida, and to Texas, to Oklahoma, in order to build our case. Remember, the Republican National Convention is not governed by federal law or state law. It's governed by its own rules. And the Credentials Committee, and indeed the full convention, has the authority, has the power to unseat delegates who were fraudulently elected and seat other delegates in their place. There's a historical precedent for this. This is precisely how Dwight Eisenhower was nominated in 1952, when the Taft delegates from Texas were unseated over the fact that they were procedurally illegally elected to begin with.
Now, Trump has just stated yesterday, he said it on CNN, he says, if the Cleveland convention goes to a brokered convention, he says, and they steal it from Trump. He said, I think you'll have riots. Pretty strong words. Do you think The GOP is worried about riots in that regard. I mean, we saw what happened in Chicago. That was a contrived event. MoveOn.org, taxpayer-funded groups going in and assaulting Trump. But now, what kind of riots is he speaking of?
Well, I think he's talking about his own supporters who would be very, very unhappy if this nomination is stolen. Now, so I think you'll have, I'm not sure there'll be riots. I think he may have been speaking rhetorically, but you're going to have mass demonstrations. And frankly, the Republican nomination will be worth nothing if it is stolen from Trump. Were they to deliver to a Mitt Romney, and let's be very clear, Mitt Romney wanted to run in 2016. He didn't have the cojones to do it. Why? Because he was convinced that Jeb Bush was unstoppable, that Jeb Bush was inevitable, and that many of his money people were also Bush money people. So he made a bad decision not to run. He now regrets that decision. He'd still like to be the white knight of the establishment in an effort to stop Donald Trump. And look, right now, wherever he is, he's wearing makeup, he is in the bullpen, he's trying to figure out how to get into this game, yet he doesn't have the courage to file for the New Jersey primary, to file for the California primary. It's still not too late to get on the ballot in that and a half dozen other states. But I don't think he's going to do that because he knows he would be crushed by Donald Trump.
Now, moving on to Hillary Clinton, of course, you have the book, The Clintons' War on Women. For folks watching this on YouTube right now, you can actually go into our archives. We did an extensive interview with Roger on this book. But since the book has come out, what has been the backlash? Obviously, we've seen Hillary now, sort of recoiling in some of her positions. How has the backlash been that you've witnessed on Hillary with this book coming out?
Well, as you probably know, I have been banned by CNN. Prior to the publication of this book, I was occasionally asked to opine there on matters political. But now we have Soviet-style censorship. So Rick Wilson, for example, who calls himself a Republican strategist, but he's not, has on Twitter called for someone to put a bullet in Donald Trump, has accused Ann Coulter of being a prostitute who is having anal sex with Donald Trump on Twitter. He is still an exalted commentator for CNN. I am banned because I'm telling the truth about Hillary Clinton. The other day I was giving a radio interview on BBC, and as soon as I raised the fact that Bill Clinton is a Bill Cosby type sexual predator, and that Hillary, because she has threatened and bullied and intimidated his victims, either directly, personally, or through the hiring of heavy-handed private detectives, is an accessory after the fact in those sex crimes, rather than argue with me or allow me to lay out my point of view, they simply hung up on me at the BBC. So as Jack Nicholson once said, some people out there can't handle the truth.
So what do you make of the moving forward? Let's just play it out here. Trump gets the nomination, and now it's Clinton versus Trump. How do you foresee the attack vector coming into the foreground with this information in Donald Trump's quiver, if you will?
Well, I think he's already demonstrated a willingness to use it. Only weeks ago, as you know, when Hillary accused him of being a sexist, he shot back very quickly, pointing out that Bill has assaulted women and that Hillary has enabled that, and going on to say that she has actually abused Bill's victims. So Hillary immediately backed off and said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. There's zero chance she won't be able to avoid talking about it or that she will be able to avoid talking about it, because I expect Bill's victims, courageous women like Kathleen Willey and Juanita Broderick and Paula Jones and Christy Zurcher and Helen Dowdy and Becky Brown and many others, to be speaking openly. In the old days when we only had 3 television networks and where the press could be suppressed, those days are over. If CNN doesn't want to interview these women, that's okay. We'll buy 30-second spots for them to tell their story in between the segments of CNN's programming.
Now, you created a PAC. It's called Rape PAC.
Yes, the Rape Accountability Project for Education. And we expect this fall to be putting these women into the public realm where they can tell their own story. And then, as Hillary says, let the voters decide. I totally agree. Let them make a case as to what's happened to them. Let Bill and Hillary deny it, which they will, and then let the voters decide who's more credible.
All right, I'm seeing a note here that the Florida governor, Rick Scott, has now just endorsed Donald Trump. Curious, though, immediately following the election, the primary there, he comes out. He wouldn't speak beforehand, though. So we've got that. Now, what do you think about when you have the Trump Clinton? What am I trying to say here? You have them going head to head. You have the rape pact going on. You said you were banned from CNN. What happens next when these two come head to head? I mean, what are we going to see in the future here?
Well, look, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, John Kasich all said that Bill's sexual history is irrelevant, that it's off the table. Donald Trump doesn't believe that at all, because it's not about Bill, it's about Hillary's active abuse of women in the cover-up of Bill's crimes. I also think Hillary's tenure as Secretary of State, where she has systematically helped install the Muslim Brotherhood in the place of our allies in at least 3 countries. They'd like to do this also in Syria. The fact that her closest aide is most likely a Muslim Brotherhood spy, Huma Abedin, that's going to be an important part of this campaign. Voters need to know that her parents and her brothers are active in the radical Islamist terrorist movement. Americans need to know that. You're going to see a complete deconstruction of the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative. This is not a charity. This is a slush fund for grifters. This is a luxury travel service for the Clinton family. And more importantly, this is a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes. Everything Hillary Clinton had control of as Secretary of State was for sale. If you were an international oil company or a person of enormous wealth or an international company, you could purchase the removal of Gaddafi, for example, which was purchased by bribes to the Clintons. You could buy multi-million-dollar defense contracts that needed approval at the Secretary of State's office. You could buy approval for arms purchases that were previously illegal by giving million-dollar contributions to the Clinton Foundation. Donald Trump has the gumption and the facts to expose all of this. So I think the Clintons are aware of the fact that Trump is their worst enemy, their worst nightmare. Unlike these other Republican candidates who are in the tank, who are in the same club with the Clintons, no holes will be barred. Trump is a brawler, and he has the facts. This is going to be one of the most exciting and most hard-fought presidential campaigns in American history.
Now, what about the email server? I mean, you brought up a laundry list of ways that Hillary Clinton can be taken down. We haven't even talked about the server. The FBI is investigating her. What's going to happen there?
Well, I don't think we know. I'm still confident the FBI director, who is a straight, by-the-book law enforcement guy, is going to recommend her indictment. I'm also fairly comfortable that Barack Obama will pardon her relatively quickly. She's never going to go to trial. And then the question remains, is he pardoning her in return for her dropping out of this race? Or is he pardoning her so an indictment and a trial is not a barrier to staying in this race? That's the part we don't know. In any event, I expect the FBI director to resign. Who knows, perhaps 20 or 30 FBI agents will resign with him, and you're going to have a firestorm. Either way, this is not a net plus for Hillary Clinton. Now, I think there's 2 different aspects of the email scandal people need to understand. These emails were erased largely because they show the nexus between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation. They are a paper trail that shows that it was a pay-for-play operation. And if you wanted to buy the right to buy guns, and you needed the State Department to approve that, you simply had to grease the Clinton Foundation. Then secondarily, of course, is the fact that the emails, many of them, contained top secret classified information. Huma Abedin is a spy for the Muslim Brotherhood, someone who is not a loyal American, someone who needs to become a household name in this campaign, was the individual who reviewed all those documents. So how many of them did she send to the Muslim Brotherhood or to foreign governments before they were destroyed? I doubt her loyalty, and the American people will doubt her loyalty once her background and her connections are fully exposed.
Now, you mentioned Benghazi, and of course, we know now from the emails that it was revealed on her server, an unsecure server, that she actually revealed the location of Christopher Stevens, the ambassador who was then murdered. Now, she comes out and she has a serious gaffe on the campaign trail, completely disregarding his death. I mean, she literally said, "We didn't lose a single person in Libya." What does that tell us about Hillary Clinton's mental state?
Yeah, I think she's somewhat delusional. Look, many people thought that her testimony before the House was a tour de force, that she came out unscathed. On the contrary, she was nailed with at least 5 lies. In all honesty, as a professional, I could take her testimony, I could edit them into 30-second TV spots with an actual bite of her lying and then show you the facts. She told us that the attack on Benghazi and on our mission was caused by an anti-Islamic video in Turkey. We now know that that entire lie was invented by Sidney Blumenthal, the dirty trickster who was on the payroll of the Clinton Foundation. Why a charitable organization would need a dirty trickster, I don't really know. And we also know that within hours of the actual attack, she told her daughter and the Egyptian ambassador that we were attacked by a group affiliated with Al-Qaeda. So again, she's been caught in another massive lie.
All right, Roger Stone, I want to thank you for joining us here at the Next News Network. Always a pleasure to have you. Roger, your books are available on Amazon.com?
They're available on Amazon. You can go to rogerstone.com, no D, rogerstone.com. You can order them all there. If you're interested in the Clinton book, you can go to clintonswar.com, no apostrophe, clintonswar.com. If you're interested in our deconstruction of the Bush family and their involvement with the Clintons, you can go to bushcrimes.com, any of those places, or walk into your friendly neighborhood Barnes & Noble.
All right, Roger, like I said, always a pleasure, and we look forward to having you back again soon.
Delighted to be with you.